I came outside to the sound of my 3-year-old wailing like the world had ended, only to find her standing barefoot in our backyard staring at the kiddie pool, like someone had murdered it. The once crystal blue inflatable wonderland we'd spent all morning setting up was now bone dry, deflated on one side, and looked like it had been strangled by a garden hose. And there she was, Mildred McMillan, beige visor, neon pink flip-flops, and that smug I pay taxes expression she always wore like a badge of authority. She held the dripping hose like a sword she'd just used to vanquish some great evil. "You're welcome," she said flatly. "I stopped your child from wasting city resources." My daughter was sobbing. Her watermelon popsicle melted into her hand. That was the moment I knew this wasn't going to end in a polite neighborhood meeting. No, this was war. Let me rewind. Exactly 24 hours. It was a Saturday. It was hot. The kind of hot where the sidewalk feels like it's mocking your flip-flops, and your car's AC is just blowing spicy air. My daughter, Hazel, wanted to go to the water park, but since inflation has turned fun into a luxury, we decided to bring the water park home. I pulled out the inflatable kiddie pool, set it up in our modest backyard, and filled it with fresh water. Hazel was thrilled, splashing around with her plastic duckies and screaming with joy like she was on a Disney ride. I even set up a little umbrella, a lawn chair, and cracked open a cold can of sparkling water. For the first time all week, peace. Then Mildred showed up. She didn't even knock, just barged into the backyard like she owned the air. "This isn't permitted," she said, scanning the setup like a building inspector with a grudge. I stared at her, confused. "It's a kiddie pool, Mildred, on my property." She sniffed the air like she could smell rule violations. "Standing water is a mosquito hazard, and this is excessive water usage. Do you know we're under level 1 drought restrictions?" I blinked. "Mildred, we're allowed to water lawns 3 days a week. This is less water than a single load of laundry." But she had that look. That HOA Mildred I don't hear logic look. "I'll be documenting this," she muttered, pulling out her phone and taking pictures like she was doing God's work. I thought it would end there. I honestly believe that even Mildred wouldn't be deranged enough to go full eco-vigilante over a toddler's pool. I was wrong. So wrong. That night, I noticed the water level looked slightly lower, but I chalked it up to evaporation. I had no idea that this woman, this demon in yoga pants, had crept into my yard in the middle of the night with a hose in hand and drained it herself. My security camera footage would later reveal the whole ridiculous scene. Her sneaking in with a headlamp, looking around like she was in a spy movie, then jamming her hose in and siphoning the pool like she was rescuing the neighborhood. She even muttered to herself, "People like this are the reason the planet's dying." And then, with a satisfied little hum, she walked away like she'd saved us all. Now, standing there with my sobbing daughter and the sad, floppy pool, I felt a deep, volcanic rage simmering beneath my skin. Mildred had crossed the line. I didn't care if it was just water. This wasn't about the pool. This was about control. This was about someone who thought she had the right to parent my child and police my home. And now Mildred had earned my full, undivided attention. I scooped Hazel into my arms, told her we'd fix it, and brought her inside. I gave her an ice pop and queued up her favorite cartoon. But her mood was ruined. And honestly, so was mine. I walked straight to my laptop and opened the footage from the backyard camera. There it was, time-stamped, high definition, full Mildred behavior on display. I copied the clip and saved it to 3 different folders just in case. Then I stared at my screen for a moment, thinking, I could report her. I could take it to the HOA, file a complaint, make a fuss. But no, that's what she would expect. That's the language Mildred understands, forms, letters, meetings. But I didn't want policy. I wanted impact. I wanted the kind of petty vengeance that leaves a mark. I wanted her to feel it the way Hazel had felt it when she stood in front of that empty pool, with tears in her eyes. That night, I made a phone call. A few, actually. Friends, neighbors, people who were just as sick of Mildred as I was. Turns out, I wasn't alone. One neighbor told me Mildred had once reported his wind chimes for being emotionally disruptive. Another said she took pictures of people's trash bins to check for non-regulation placement. This woman had declared war on happiness, and now we were forming a resistance. The plan came together faster than I expected. Jell-O. That was the key. Bright red, glorious gelatin. I did the math, looked up how much we'd need, how long it would take to set, what temperature was safe, and who had extra burners we could borrow. It was absurd. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. And the best part, Mildred had no idea what was coming. Because if she thought draining a kiddie pool would teach me a lesson, she was about to learn that some people don't just fight back. They jiggle. The sun rose over our sleepy cul-de-sac like any other day. But in my kitchen, it was a full-blown war room. My countertops were covered in boxes, hundreds of them, packed with neon packets of strawberry, cherry, and raspberry-flavored Jell-O. Hazel was in her booster seat, watching me with wide-eyed fascination as I dumped packet after packet into a massive metal pot on the stove. "What are we making?" she asked, her voice hopeful. "A magic pool," I told her, and she giggled like I just promised her unicorns. My phone buzzed on the counter every couple of minutes. Neighbors checking in, dropping off supplies, confirming their shift. The plan was insane, over the top, possibly illegal in at least 3 states. And yet, everyone was all in because Mildred didn't just mess with me. She messed with all of us. By noon, the operation was in full swing. My backyard looked like a chemistry lab, and the tailgate party had a love child. We had people stationed at stoves inside, a camping grill outside, coolers full of water, thermometers, and measuring cups. We weren't just making Jell-O. We were engineering it for aquatic excellence. One neighbor, Ted, a retired HVAC tech who took his hobbies too seriously, was monitoring cooling times like he was launching a space shuttle. "If it's too hot, it'll melt the plastic," he muttered, adjusting the ice packs. "Too cold, and it won't set right. We need that perfect jiggle." I nodded solemnly. This was no longer about revenge. This was art. The kiddie pool, freshly inflated and scrubbed, sat in the center of the yard like a stage waiting for its star performer. As each batch of warm, sticky liquid was poured in, the smell of artificial fruit filled the air. It was sickly sweet, cartoonish, and borderline absurd. We layered the color cert on red until the pool glowed like a nuclear fruit punch. It was mesmerizing. One kid peeking over the fence gasped and shouted eyes Jell-O, and I knew word was about to spread. We worked in shifts all night keeping the pool covered with a tarp and corners weighted down, to keep out curious raccoons or worse Mildred from discovering the plot. By morning the air was cooler, the gelatin had set, and the pool was officially a jiggling, glistening masterpiece. Hazel was the first to dip her foot in. "It feels weird," she shrieked, laughing uncontrollably. Then she jumped, not stepped, jumped. Full toddler cannonball into the world's stickiest splash zone. Red blobs flew into the air and splattered back into the pool. She surfaced like a strawberry monster. Cackling with pure joy, my heart practically exploded. The other kids weren't far behind. By 10 a.m., half the neighborhood was in my backyard. Kids were scooping, squishing, launching handfuls of Jell-O at each other. Parents were laughing. Someone brought a Bluetooth speaker and played party music. It felt like summer had come alive. One mom brought whipped cream and started making fake sundaes on her kid's head. Ted showed up with a lawn chair and declared himself Jell-O lifeguard, blowing into a kazoo and wearing floaties on his arms. I stood on the porch sipping iced tea and soaking in the chaos. This wasn't just revenge. It was healing. Then came the moment we all knew was coming. Mildred, I heard the gasp first, sharp, theatrical. Like someone witnessing a crime, she stood at the edge of my fence, mouth agape, clutching a small clipboard like it might shield her from moral decay. Her visor was tilted just slightly, like she'd power walked here in righteous fury. Her eyes locked on the pool like it was a portal to hell. "What?" she hissed. "Is this?" I took my time walking over Jell-O. I said, "You drained the pool, so we upgraded." She blinked, visibly shaken by the complete lack of shame I displayed. "This is unsanitary," she snapped. "This is a food product. This is a biohazard." Behind me, a kid launched a glob of Jell-O like a snowball. It hit another with a wet splat. Laughter exploded. Mildred flinched like She'd been shot. You are violating at least 3 HOA regulations, she shrieked. I will be calling an emergency board meeting. I sipped my tea again. You'll have to wait. The HOA president's on vacation this week. She puffed up like a balloon. Then I'll call him directly. I smiled. He left me in charge while he's gone. Her jaw dropped. Silence, then a high-pitched scoff. You're the acting president? I nodded. Crazy, right? I leaned in just a little. Want to file a complaint? I can get you the proper forms. Her hands trembled. The clipboard hit the ground with a dull thud. She turned without another word, stomping off down the sidewalk like an angry pelican. The moment she disappeared around the corner, the backyard erupted into applause. It was loud, spontaneous, joyous. Even the kids clapped. One of them shouted, "Long live Jell-O." And I swear I saw someone throw glitter. Later that day, I found a typed letter shoved into my mailbox. Cease all unauthorized gelatin-based activities immediately. This neighborhood is not a circus. It wasn't signed, but it didn't need to be. I framed it. By nightfall, the party was winding down. We drained the pool the best we could. Some of it had been flung onto the lawn, smeared across shirts, or eaten by giggling toddlers. My yard looked like someone had fought a Kool-Aid monster and lost, but I didn't care. I hosed off what I could, packed up the trash, and watched Hazel fall asleep on the couch with sticky hair and the happiest look on her face. Seen and weak, Mildred thought she could punish us with pettiness, but we fought back with joy. And next time she tried to play queen of the HOA, she'd remember what happened when she messed with the wrong kiddie pool. Mildred didn't waste a second. By the following morning, there were 6 violation notices taped to my front door, flapping in the breeze like angry little flags of passive-aggressive warfare. One was for unauthorized use of food products in recreational structures. Another accused me of encouraging unsafe child behavior. There was one about public spectacle events without HOA approval, and even one warning me against neighborhood disruption via unnatural colors. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off the porch. Mildred had officially gone full dictator. Not that I was surprised. If I'd learned anything by now, it was that Mildred didn't just enjoy rules. She got high off enforcing them. The more ridiculous the rule, the more gleefully she slapped it on someone's door like a parking ticket. But she wasn't stopping at me. By noon, I started getting texts from other neighbors. Apparently, anyone who had even looked at the Jell-O pool was getting flagged. Mrs. Henderson next door got a warning for hosting unregistered minors. Ted, the so-called Jell-O lifeguard, got slapped with a complaint for improper attire and failure to maintain public decency. Someone else got a citation for potential sugar waste contamination. The block group chat lit up like a bonfire. People were confused, then furious, then determined. Mildred had just declared war on the entire street, and no one was in the mood to surrender. I knew we couldn't just fight her with Jell-O again. This was a long game now. Mildred wasn't just playing at revenge, she was playing at power. So I did the one thing that would drive her absolutely insane. I got organized. I started collecting stories from everyone. I built a folder titled Mildred's Greatest Hits. It was bigger than I expected. There were reports of her calling the city to inspect fences, finding a family for having a rainbow flag, measuring lawns with a ruler, and once telling a teenage girl that her bike was not aesthetic. One guy said she yelled at his inflatable Santa for disrupting the winter mood. Another neighbor said she tried to send them a cease and desist over their wind spinner, which apparently gave her vertigo. My favorite one came from a mom who swore Mildred filed a complaint against her toddler's sidewalk chalk drawings for unauthorized public art. The more stories I heard, the more I realized just how much people had suffered under their ridiculous rule. But now they were free. The HOA board, now with me officially elected as vice president, held an open forum to discuss Mildred's behavior. It wasn't just a meeting, it was a cathartic release. One by one, residents stood up and recounted years of pettiness, bullying, and rule bending from the woman who once claimed her home had the moral compass of the entire block. The board voted to permanently ban Mildred from holding any HOA position ever again. Her backyard irrigation system was dismantled, and she was fined an additional $500 for noncompliance. The look on her face when she got the final notice was something I'll never forget. It was the expression of someone who thought they were untouchable and just realized they weren't even likable. For a while, she sulked. She stopped coming to meetings. She glared from behind her windows like a cartoon villain in exile, but she couldn't help herself. One afternoon, I caught her pacing on her driveway, muttering to herself and loudly fake calling a lawyer on speakerphone. I waved, she gave me the finger, I smiled wider. The weirdest part was that despite all of it, my yard never looked better. People started dropping off a little gift, a batch of cookies. A lawn gnome with sunglasses. One neighbor brought me a t-shirt that said Jell-O Revolutionary, and another painted a tiny mural of Ruby in her Jell-O pool. Our block felt more alive than it had in years. We were connected by more than proximity. We were united by survival. Mildred's reign of petty terror was over, but I knew she wasn't gone for good. People like her never disappear. They just wait, and so with Mildred disgraced, the neighborhood reborn, and Hazel asking when we could do another funny pool, I started planning something bigger. Not just for her, for everyone, because sometimes the best way to win a battle isn't to fight louder. It's to laugh louder, to splash louder, to jiggle harder. Mildred came at us with rules and rage, but we answered with joy and gelatin, and in the end, the only thing she managed to drain was her own relevance.